Before Metatron ascended to the highest chamber of heaven, before the scribe of souls received the throne beside the throne, another being stood at that station, ancient, unnamed, luminous, beyond endurance. The early mystics called this figure the angel of the face, the one who bears the divine countenance, who reflects what cannot be seen directly, who mediates the radiance that would annihilate lesser creation. This being appears in the most archaic strata of throne mysticism, woven through fragmentary visions and priestly encounters, a presence too terrible to elaborate, too central to ignore. The face, panim in Hebrew, signifies not mere appearance, but the totality of divine presence, the concentrated manifestation of infinite reality compressed into perceptible form. To stand before the face is to stand at the threshold where creation meets the uncreated, where thought becomes fire, where proximity itself becomes unbearable. The angel of the face occupies this threshold. He does not possess the face. He carries it, reflects it, mediates its unbearable luminosity to those who ascend through vision or ritual into the highest reaches of the celestial architecture. This figure predates the elaborate Metatron traditions. He appears briefly, veiled in the earliest texts, never fully named, never fully described, always positioned at the uttermost boundary of what can be encountered without dissolution. His station is one of ultimate proximity and ultimate danger. The throne visions that preserve fragments of his presence treat him with reverent silence, as if excessive description would violate the very mystery his existence maintains. The phrase, "the face of God," emerges from the deepest layers of Israelite religious experience. In priestly theophanies, the face, panim YHWH, designates the direct, overwhelming presence of the divine, distinguished from lesser manifestations or distant communications. To see this face is traditionally forbidden. Moses requests it and is denied, permitted only to glimpse what remains after the passing of glory. Yet the theological logic of ancient Israel simultaneously required intermediaries who could bear divine authority, who could communicate the will and presence of the Absolute without destroying those who received revelation. Early angelology thus produced figures of extraordinary elevation, beings who stood so close to the divine throne that they functioned as extensions of divine agency itself. Among these, the angel of the face occupies the most exalted and most dangerous position. References appear scattered through proto-Merkabah materials, early midrashic fragments, and the oldest layers of mystical speculation preserved in texts like Jubilees and fragmentary throne visions. This angel is not simply near the presence. He embodies its reflection, its transmissible radiance. The theological dilemma is absolute. How can infinite being manifest without obliterating finite consciousness? How can the uncreated light enter creation without consuming it? Ancient cosmologies answered through stratified hierarchies of intermediation, layers of emanation, reflection, and mediation that progressively diminish divine intensity while preserving divine authority. The angel of the face represents the first and most radical step in this descent, the initial mirror that makes all subsequent revelation possible. In the earliest materials, this figure remains deliberately unnamed or identified only by function. The reticence reflects both reverence and theological caution. To name such a being would be to approach naming the unnameable itself. The angel carries the name, reflects the face, but is not himself the source. He is the first differentiation, the initial emanation through which infinite presence becomes cosmologically operative. Some traditions hint that multiple angels bore this title, suggesting not individual identity, but functional station. Whoever stands at that threshold becomes, by necessity, the face-bearer. The priestly lineages that preserved these traditions understood something profound about the structure of revelation. They recognized that the gap between infinite and finite cannot be crossed in a single step, that mediation must occur through beings who participate in both domains. The angel of the face is the supreme example of this principle, the highest possible created being, standing so close to the source that his created nature becomes almost indistinguishable from divine essence. The angel of the face stands at the apex of created hierarchy, the highest point where being remains distinct from being itself. His position is unique, neither fully within the divine unity nor external to it, but rather the living threshold where infinity encounters cosmos. Early throne visions depict this figure as surrounded by fire that does not consume, by light that has source but no origin, by radiance that seems simultaneously to illuminate and to veil. His primary function is mediatorial. He transmits divine commands, carries divine authority, manifests divine presence in modes that created beings can barely endure. When prophets and mystics ascend through the seven heavens, through the progressively intensifying realms of angelic choirs and celestial palaces, they encounter increasing degrees of luminosity. At the final threshold, before the throne itself, stands this figure, the ultimate guardian and the ultimate revealer. The angel bears the name. In several fragmentary traditions, he is described as having the tetragrammaton inscribed upon him or within him, making him the living carrier of divine identity. This is not merely symbolic delegation. It represents ontological participation. The name in ancient Israelite thought signifies essence and presence. For an angel to bear the name means he functions as the mobile, perceivable presence of what remains eternally transcendent. His radiance is repeatedly described as unbearable. Visionaries who encounter him report effects of terror, paralysis, and overwhelming awe, the classic responses to direct encounter with the numinous. Unlike lower angels who serve as messengers or executors of specific tasks, the angel of the face mediates presence itself. His appearance signals not information but encounter, not communication but confrontation with the absolute. Fire and lightning accompany this figure. These elements, common to theophanic traditions across the ancient Near East, signify both purification and danger. Fire transforms without being consumed. Lightning reveals without remaining visible. The angel of the face embodies these paradoxes. He is the stable manifestation of what cannot stabilize, the enduring presence of what cannot endure manifestation. The earliest texts describe his appearance with deliberate vagueness. He is like the appearance of fire, surrounded by radiance terrible in splendor. Descriptions that gesture toward experience without reducing it to comprehensible detail. This literary strategy reflects theological necessity. The angel exists at the boundary of what can be described because he exists at the boundary of what can be encountered. Over time, this archaic figure recedes from the mystical record. As Merkabah mysticism develops more elaborate hierarchies and more detailed cosmological maps, the unnamed angel of the face gradually disappears from explicit mention. His role, his station, his function, all of these migrate to Metatron, the figure who will become the supreme angel, the lesser YHWH, the one seated on a throne beside the throne. Metatron inherits the position but emerges from different textual and mythological roots. The older being, the face-bearer, fades into the deepest layers of tradition, preserved only in fragmentary references and theological implications. The metaphysical logic underlying the angel of the face reveals fundamental structures of emanationist cosmology. The face itself must be understood not as anthropomorphic metaphor, but as technical terminology for divine intellect. The first hypostasis, the primordial nous that reflects the absolute one while remaining distinct from it. In Hermetic and Platonic frameworks, this initial emanation represents the transition from absolute simplicity to the first differentiation that makes cosmos possible. The angel of the face functions as the personification of this nous principle. He is not a being who happens to reflect divinity. He is the living structure through which infinite intelligence becomes cosmologically operative. His being consists entirely in this reflective function. He has no existence apart from his role as mirror, as intermediary, as the luminous medium through which uncreated light enters the architecture of creation. This generates a profound metaphysical necessity. Absolute infinity cannot directly interface with finitude without collapsing. The ontological distance that makes creation possible. Direct encounter would mean dissolution of the finite into the infinite, the immediate return of emanation to source. The intermediary prevents this collapse while enabling genuine relation. The angel of the face is the ontological buffer, the luminous membrane that separates while connecting, that maintains distinction while enabling participation. Ancient mystical traditions understood revelation not as arbitrary divine decision, but as structural necessity within the logic of being itself. For the infinite to be known, it must reflect itself. For the transcendent to become present, it must establish presence through an entity that is simultaneously divine and cosmic, uncreated and created, infinite and finite. The angel of the face embodies this impossible position. He stands in both realms simultaneously, belonging fully to neither. The concept of bearing the name expresses this ontological paradox. In Israelite thought, the name is not label, but essence. To know the name is to access the being it designates. Yet the name of the Absolute cannot be known directly without being consumed by what it represents. The angel who bears the name makes the unthinkable thinkable, the unapproachable approachable. He is the living contradiction that makes cosmos possible, the finite vessel of infinite presence, the created bearer of uncreated light. This arrangement reveals the deep structure of all hierarchical cosmology. Reality proceeds by degrees of diminishing intensity but increasing extension. The highest beings possess greatest intensity and narrowest extension. The lowest possess least intensity but widest extension. The angel of the face occupies the first degree below absolute source, maximum intensity with minimum extension into multiplicity. He is pure reflection, pure mediation, the undiluted mirror that makes all subsequent mirrors possible. His function can be understood through the ancient metaphysics of participation. Lower beings participate in higher beings through progressive degrees of resemblance and connection. But the first being must participate directly in the source itself, without intermediary, making his mode of existence fundamentally different from all that follows. He does not receive divine nature through another. He receives it immediately, making him the prototype of all mediation, the original pattern that all subsequent hierarchies replicate at diminishing intensity. Hermetic cosmology provides precise conceptual parallels. The figure of Nous in texts like the Poemandries emerges as the first emanation from the unknowable God, the divine mind that contains all archetypes and serves as pattern for cosmic order. Nous functions as intermediary. It reflects the Father while generating the Logos and lower demiurgic powers. The angel of the face occupies an identical position: first emanation, pure reflection, source of subsequent mediation. Both traditions recognize the same structural necessity that the Absolute requires a first mirror before subsequent revelation can proceed. Persian angelology contributes complementary structures. The Amesha Spentas, the holy immortals of Zoroastrian tradition, radiate directly from Ahura Mazda as aspects or attributes made hypostatic. They are not separate beings, but living attributes, divine qualities given quasi-independent existence to enable cosmic order. The highest of these, Vohu Mana, good mind, functions as the immediate reflection of divine thought. This closely parallels the angel of the face as bearer of divine intellect and presence. The Persian tradition explicitly describes these beings as surrounding the divine throne, maintaining cosmic order through their proximity to Source. Early Christian angelology preserves fragments of this archaic figure under the title Angel of the Lord, the being who appears in crucial theophanies throughout Hebrew Scripture, who speaks in first person as if God himself, yet remains somehow distinct. Patristic interpreters struggled with this figure, eventually identifying him with the pre-incarnate Logos. The theological instinct was sound. This angel represents the principle of divine self-revelation, the structure through which transcendence becomes presence. The Enochian tradition transforms this pattern. As 3 Enoch develops its elaborate mythology, Metatron emerges as the supreme angel, elevated above all celestial hierarchies, seated on a throne, bearing the divine name called Lesser, Weichab. Every attribute associated with the archaic angel of the face transfers to Metatron: proximity to the throne, mediation of presence, reflection of divine radiance, bearer of the name. The textual evidence suggests not innovation, but inheritance, not creation, but replacement. Metatron occupies a station that predated him, filling a role that the earliest traditions assigned to an older, unnamed figure. The Angel of the Face reveals essential architecture within the metaphysics of divine manifestation. His existence demonstrates that ancient cosmologies understood a fundamental impossibility. The Absolute cannot self-manifest directly. Manifestation requires differentiation. Differentiation requires an entity distinct from source, yet participating in its nature. This entity must be simultaneously same and other, same in essence, other in function. This generates what might be called the necessity of intermediation. Not moral necessity, not arbitrary divine preference, but logical necessity within the structure of being itself. For consciousness to ascend toward the Absolute, it must encounter reflection before source. For the Absolute to descend toward cosmos, it must generate reflection before extension. The intermediary is not optional, it is structural. The terror associated with the Angel of the Face reflects accurate intuition about proximity to source. Early mystics recognized that higher ascent means greater danger, that nearness to absolute being threatens dissolution of individual existence. The face-bearer stands at the point where this danger becomes maximal, one step further, and there is no longer encounter, but absorption, no longer vision, but extinction. The angel protects by bearing what cannot be directly borne. This explains the later transition to Metatron. As mystical traditions developed more elaborate cartographies of ascent, more detailed protocols for heavenly journey, the archaic unnamed figure required more precise definition. Metatron emerges as the named, elaborated version of the older presence. Same station, same function, but integrated into more complex cosmological systems. The replacement suggests not theological evolution, but organizational necessity. The growing detail of mystical literature required named entities rather than veiled references. What remains consistent is the underlying metaphysical recognition. Consciousness cannot approach infinite being directly. It requires guides, mediators, intermediaries, who translate absolute intensity into graduated degrees of accessibility. The Angel of the Face represents the highest and most essential of these translations, the initial reduction that makes all subsequent revelation possible. The implications extend beyond angelology into fundamental ontology. If the highest created being exists purely as reflection, then perhaps all being below him participates in the same logic. Each level of reality mirrors the level above, creating a cascade of reflections that extends from the throne to the material world. The Angel of the Face is not anomaly but prototype, not exception but pattern. His mode of existence, pure reflection of higher reality, becomes the template for all cosmic manifestation. Before Metatron, before the elaborate hierarchies of Merkabah speculation, before the throne beside the throne received its occupant, there stood a being whose function was pure reflection, the Angel of the Face, the carrier of unbearable radiance, the first mirror in which infinite light became perceivable presence. He has no name, because naming would diminish the mystery of his station. He has no elaborated mythology, because elaboration would obscure the simplicity of his function. He stands at the threshold, where thought becomes fire, where presence becomes annihilating proximity, where the absolute first differentiates itself into manifestation. The mystics who glimpsed this figure understood. The divine reveals itself through reflection, not through direct exposure. The face appears in a face. The name resides in a bearer. The infinite makes itself finite through a luminous intermediary who partakes of both realms while belonging wholly to neither. This is the forgotten angel, the unnamed mediator, the first and most necessary step in the descent of light into cosmos, standing forever at the boundary between what is and what must be hidden, maintaining the threshold that makes both revelation and cosmos possible.